Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of December 2019. In this video, we're going to take a look at the earth signs, Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. All right, let's begin with Capricorn. Now, this is a month that I'm breaking into four distinct sort of passages or different themes. The first actually centers around Capricorn, which is if this is your sign, this is your rising or your sun sign. Most of the energy of the month is centered around Capricorn, as it will be in January when Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn come into a historic conjunction with one another. Right now, the big news for the month is that in the first couple of days of the month, Jupiter is going to enter the sign of Capricorn, your home sign, where it will stay for the next year. And then around the 10th to the 14th or so, Venus will be going through conjunctions to Saturn and Pluto in your first sign and home house. And then at the end of the month, around the 25th or the 26th, you're going to have a new moon solar eclipse with Jupiter in the sign of Capricorn in your first house. So that is a completely tremendous, powerful amount of emphasis on that whole sign first house of Capricorn. And it's the kind of thing that it's going to be shaping the narrative into the new year because of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's coming up next month as well. So let's start by talking about what this means for you in general. First house was called the helm. It is the steering wheel, you could say, of the ship of life. It pertains to your health, to your sense of identity, to your sense of dharma, essence, duty in life. It pertains to your sense of your character, the character that you're here to play, which is a part of your destiny. As spirit souls, we've played many parts before. We've played many roles and had many characters before with a sense of duty and obligation, morally, etc. It's also, this is the character that is unique to this lifetime. And we're also talking about a general sense of direction in the first house. How are you navigating your ship and where are you taking it? Very important personal and oftentimes health-related issues come up when there's a heavy emphasis on anybody's first house. Well, there's been an emphasis for you for a while, dating back to December of 2017 when Saturn entered your first house. But now with Jupiter, the planet of expansion, growth, blessings, virtue, entering your first house, it may be a little bit of a relief and a sense of there being just sort of blessings and benevolence kind of wind at your back feeling right now, which is good. The thing that comes along with this that is really complicated is that Jupiter is in its fall in the sign of Capricorn. And what that means is that there is a general way in which the virtuous qualities of Jupiter can be compromised by Saturnian qualities. Even though this is natural to you, you're a Saturn-ruled person, Saturn's in your own home sign in first house right now, it's not a bad place to be. It's possible that more of the heavier, more weightier, difficult themes of Saturn become emphasized in your life right now. For example, the newness of a solar eclipse in your first house this month and Jupiter entering your first house, it could be really nice. New projects, new ideas, a sense of rebirth, the beginning or start of an endeavor, birth in general. That's all great, but it could come with the hardness, the austerity, the hard work, the difficulty, the limitations, restrictions, or setbacks of Saturn. So, for you, that may not, of all the signs, like you may be able to work with that a little bit more, but make no mistake, this is the kind of thing that could be about, a blessing, a benefit that's going to pay off in time, that requires a lot of hard work, that comes with heaviness, that has alongside of it the effects of sobering, painful, difficult events or even endings in life, which are Saturnian. Remember, we're coming up on a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in your first house. So personal expansion, it's kind of like the school of hard knocks. You'll get your degree, but the curriculum might be some hard knocks. That's what it feels like with Jupiter entering your first house. But again, like, you can't underestimate the virtue, the enthusiasm, and the sense of growth and optimism that Jupiter brings. It's just, it has that feeling of like a new beginning that comes sometimes with some austere circumstances. So at any rate, that's the majority of where things are going this month, except for between the 10th and the 14th, Venus will conjoin Saturn and Pluto, and that basically pushes you towards a time of death, rebirth, a more serious, weighty time around Venusian things. That could be, for example, things that are near and dear to you that you love or that you find pleasing, children, love life, friends, romance, sexuality, pleasure in general. Sometimes people have to, get on a diet. They have to face up to the reality that they're overeating or indulging too much. Or sometimes we have to, deal with a setback. We used to be a drinker and suddenly we've started drinking again. Any kinds of setbacks around your relationship with pleasure that force you to have to get real and set better boundaries, that could be an issue. On the other hand, just the maturing of relationships and the challenges around relationships in general with Venus, goddess of love, conjoining Saturn and Pluto. That's between the 10th and the 14th. Now, this is also interesting because Jupiter is going to make a trine to Uranus, and Jupiter's trine to Uranus will happen right around the winter solstice, around the 20th, right around that time. And so the Jupiter trine to Uranus in the 5th house, which is the house of good fortune, and a house that was associated with Venus traditionally, bestower of blessings, beauty, grace, love, and happiness, could mean that there's something that's happening that is new, rebellious, defiant, original, creative, a little disruptive and unexpected, and brings some degree of good fortune. And this could, because of Venus's transition through Saturn and with Saturn and Pluto, it's a mixed, it really has a kind of mixed feeling around it. Like something really good is happening this month, but especially around, some potential for some real creative breakthroughs, the need to start fresh, start a new chapter in your life. But it's coming through some Venusian challenges, a shakeup around Venusian things. So that could be a creative renaissance. I think likely it has to do with challenges and changes in relationships in particular. It can also be like, literally, this can be about the birth of a child, or the topic of pregnancy can come up and be a kind of a game-changing presence this month. Okay. Now, the next transit that I have my eye on is the transit that's taking place all month long between Mercury, the Sun, and Neptune, between Sagittarius and Pisces, your 12th and 3rd house, and the Moon in Gemini in your 6th house. Now, ultimately, the full moon comes around the 11th of the month, and the first square from the Sun to Neptune is like on the 7th. The square from Mercury to Neptune in the 3rd is going to be around the 20th. So what we're really looking at, because of the full moon as a highlight of this process, is a month-long adventure between these planets in the 6th, 3rd, and 12th houses. So first of all, the dichotomy between let's talk about the full moon as a kind of emblematic of the entire month. The full moon is going to be in Gemini in the 6th house. Traditionally, the 6th house is the joy of Mars, the place of combat and conflict. Potential for mental and emotional conflict or tension. Could be very creative in nature, but it will probably be a little tense, or there may be a lot of work that one is doing. Or the theme of mental and emotional health could be pronounced. Then you're looking at the opposition to, Mercury and the Sun in the 12th house. So this is significant because Moon is in Mercury's sign of Gemini. Mercury is in its detriment in the 12th house. So when you look at that combination, they're opposed to one another. You're thinking about the potential for a level of philosophical or intellectual conflict and tension in general this month. And the 12th house is an equally difficult place, like the 6th house. The 12th house is often a place where we're losing control in some way, and it's often painful or difficult. And then you have the T-square from Neptune in the 3rd house, which, in terms of our mental and emotional space this month, it could be confusing. There may not be things may not be very clear. You may be sorting through the difference between fantasy, fiction, and reality. But one of the things that is probable here is that questions about what is true are going to be really, really important in order to navigate what looks to be a difficult mental and emotional space this month. I think that the month is filled with a lot of potential, with Jupiter entering the 1st house. Like, that's a good sign. But this T-square between the mutable energy of, Gemini, Sag, and Pisces in these cadent houses suggests a more liminal space mentally, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, and questions about what's true, what's real, and what's not real. How much should I compromise my own ideas and beliefs, or how much should I conform to the ideas and beliefs of others? How important are my ideas or opinions? Again, what's true and what's not true. So those dynamics will be present, all month long, especially around the full moon, which is on the 11th. Okay, so going forward from there, we are, the other transit that I have my eye on this month, which comes right around the 20th, is going to be Venus entering the sign, back this up a little bit, Venus entering the sign of Aquarius, and then by the 22nd, making a square to Uranus and Taurus. Venus entering your second house is good for finances and money. It's a bringer of blessings in terms of your financial reality. Square to Uranus in the 5th house, there could be some unexpected changes or disruptions that are happening. I think they're going to be for the better. Some kind of emphasis on creative breakthrough, partnering with people, creative alliances, at the potential to receive some kind of benefit or blessing right now from others. However, the need to also break free of any kind of agreement or relationship that's unhealthy because you're feeling confined could also be emphasized. And the topics of money and relationships, again, may be wed together right there. So that's what I've got for Capricorns this month. Let's go back to the beginning of the month and start over for Taurus. All right, so we're going to look at right about the 3rd when Jupiter enters Capricorn. All right, so for Taurians this month, the theme, so much of the Capricorn energy coming through, that's really, again, the focus this month, highlighting or focused on, I should say, your 9th house. 9th house is called God, and it was the joy of the sun. It is a house that pertains to higher learning, education, the search for truth in the universe, mysticism, religion, spirituality, divination. It's also a house that pertains to the legal system. Anything that has to do with the working principles or laws of the greater cosmos of which we are a part, or of society itself, 9th house matters. Jupiter in the 9th house suggests that you are opening up a brand new chapter spiritually, educationally, new teachers entering your life, an opportunity for real expansion right now. But it may also come through the empowerment of Saturnian things, which means you have to be careful that you're not getting too rigid, too conservative, too formal. But again, the mixture here is also the idea that your faith is being challenged, tested as it is growing in the year ahead. There's big steps and leaps forward that you're taking around your mind and your understanding of reality, around things that have to do with the law or the laws of karma. So many times I'll see people, Jupiter going to their 9th house, starting to study astrology for the first time, going back to school. You could also be traveling to a different part of the world. Jupiter and Saturn signs suggest there's going to be work behind this, but the potential is there for there to be really a higher level of discipline, structure, maturity, wisdom. That would be the benefits or blessings of this transit. Now, you're going to see around the 20th that Jupiter hits the trine to Uranus in Taurus in your 1st house. That's when there's going to be this embodiment of the 9th house energy and learning that you're doing, or the emphasis on faith that's hitting you very personally and creating or causing a kind of personal revolution, or it's connected to the need that you have to break free and redefine yourself or step out, be a little bit daring or rebellious even. So watch for that around the 20th as Jupiter gets in there a little bit. Remember, there's a new moon solar eclipse on the 25th. We're going to the 26th, suggesting the same thing. A brand new chapter around 9th house matters right now. That comes in toward the end of the month. From the 11th to the 14th, or 10th to the 14th, you have Venus going through the conjunctions to Saturn or Pluto. You're going to watch for developments around your relationships, friendships, love life, and so forth in relation to your faith or beliefs. There is a deep level at which you are visiting within the context of your relationships, the reality of your beliefs and ideals. Be careful not to push things on people. Be careful not to let things get pushed onto you, and allow for some deeper death and rebirth to happen here around the conversation of faith and beliefs within your relationships. It could also be that there's a kind of feeling of a karmically fated moment that involves, someone that you love, and looking at the ethical implications of your relationships, how to be a more ethical person, how to have more integrity in your relationships, stuff like that. Okay, so then the next set of transits that I have my eye on is going to be really amplified around the full moon, but it's happening all month long. So let me give you my take on that. This involves, we've got around the 7th of the month, you're going to see the Sun square Neptune in the 11th house. Then around the 11th, you've got the full moon in Gemini in the 2nd house. I think it's around the 8th or 9th that Mercury goes into Sagittarius in the 8th house. And then by the 20th, Mercury will also square Neptune. But the point is that these energies in Sagittarius are going through squares to Neptune and Pisces, while the full moon this month is lighting up in Gemini, the opposite sign of Sagittarius, so creating a T-square. Now, this T-square energy is between the 2nd, 8th, and 11th houses. These are succedent houses. They have a lot to do with the question of resources, values, and the esteem of others versus your own self-esteem versus, let's say, your connection to groups of people and allies. So that's a lot. Let's try to try to make that more practical. For example, you might right now be looking at, you have the moon, for example, at the full moon in the sign of Gemini, which is the sign of Mercury, but Mercury is opposed to the moon in the sign of its detriment in Sagittarius. This points to a degree of mental, intellectual, or ideological conflict or tension that's present this month. And the difference between my own thoughts and the way I value my own thoughts and my own mind versus the feeling that I need to go along with other people or to gain the value or esteem of other people. Or, for example, how much do I feel like sharing my beliefs and ideals with others, forcing them on others? How much are others doing that to me? Those are questions between the 2nd and 8th house this month. It also has a lot to do with the values, resources, and money that are coming and going. My own money, my own resources, my own finances versus those of someone else. The question about debt, entanglement financially is going to be on the table. Also, questions about who and where do I belong? Who are my people? Where is my group? Where are my resources needed? And where do I feel like I might need to set some boundaries so that I'm not giving what I can't give or don't have to others? Others are going to be asking things of you this month, or you're going to be more willing to maybe give yourself to other people this month. You just want to make sure that you don't get lost or that you don't, kind of get used or become a martyr for something, especially when it comes to, time, energy, money, resources. But at a deeper level, the question here has to do with maintaining your own mind in the face of diversity and in the face of, maybe groups where you need to compromise on some level. So tricky balancing act. It'll be really pronounced right around the 11th at the full moon, but it's going on all month long. Okay, so the last transit of the month that's on my mind is Venus's ingress into the sign of Aquarius, which is taking place in your 10th house. And that brings blessings and benefits, sometimes from women or just in relationships or just in general, into your career house. But squaring Uranus in the 1st house, this is a moment of breakthrough. You are radically redefining yourself this month. And that redefinition, it's going to be happening gradually as the month goes on. But there is a way in which you are more forcefully or more rebelliously or more daringly having to break from the status quo, either in relationships or in the workplace, or something about who you are and some kind of statement that you need to make. That's going to be really important. For example, not a lot of people know this, but I've shared it a little bit in my newsletter. I'll be receiving initiation from my spiritual teacher this month and receiving a new name, a devotional name from the Bhakti Yoga tradition. This is my rising sign, right? So you'll be seeing, later in the month, I'll be probably right when Venus is squaring Uranus, I'll be telling people whatever my new name is. Anyway, so that just gives you an example, but that's the month for Taurus. Let's go back to the beginning of the month, start over, do this all again, one last time for Virgo. All right, so for Virgos, the energy of Jupiter entering Capricorn is falling into your 5th house. That happens on the 2nd into the 3rd. Venus will then conjoin with Saturn and Pluto between the 10th and the 14th. Jupiter will make a trine to Uranus right around the winter solstice, 18th, 19th, something like that. And then we have the new moon solar eclipse with Jupiter at the end of the month, like the 25th and the 26th. So for Virgos, this is all falling in your 5th house. Let's try to break it up piece by piece. 5th house is called the joy of Venus and the house of good fortune. It's a house that has to do with everything that's pleasant, enjoyable, pleasing, desirable, sometimes a little lusty or can be hedonistic, but also, sensual, pleasing, and fortunate, harmonious. So it's a good place to have planets, even though the planets moving through this house right now are somewhat difficult. So, for example, this is a very good time to expand in your life by developing a better relationship to happiness and pleasure, whether that means getting sober or whether that means loosening up a little bit. It's different for every person, but Jupiter is bringing the lessons, growth, and expansion into a house that has everything to do with your relationship to fun, joy, happiness, pleasure, etc. So how are you going to grow in that way this year? You need to cut back a little bit, become a little bit more conservative, and develop a bit more discipline. That would be great for Jupiter in the sign. On the other hand, are you going to have to work through a tendency to be really repressed? Do you need to go out and get some body work done, or just do something to honor the need that you have to feel happy and okay in your physical frame? Those are questions, I think, for this earthy Jupiter and Capricorn. It's an expansive year creatively. Sometimes people have kids, or there'll be a real creative renaissance or rebirth. You can feel just like good fortune is coming into your life. A great year for that kind of stuff. But again, you want to be careful that it's not coming at the cost of the heaviness of Saturn Pluto, meaning I'll do anything I can as long as it's benefiting me. Be careful about the intentions behind why you're doing what you're doing, or why people are helping you in the way that they're helping you. I'm not saying to be like a gift horse in the mouth, but just be cautious, because Jupiter in Capricorn is in its fall and can sometimes emphasize a more complicated relationship to good things, like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, that, this kind of thing. So be careful of that. Otherwise, the 10th to the 14th, got Venus going through the conjunction to Saturn and Pluto. This can be about death and rebirth within relationships, with Venusian things in general. This is a sobering moment. This is potential for crisis and death and regeneration. It's not a completely easy transit. Something is really being reborn during this time, and it may be a little controversial. It may force you to look at something very unconscious, especially around, again, women, friendships, love, romance, sexuality, beauty, and other such things. So Venusian things. Then you've got Jupiter hitting a trine to Uranus around, I'm just putting it around the winter solstice, a little before that, but a trine to Uranus in the 9th house. Something here about faith, a revolution of mind, of faith, something expansive that's religious or spiritual in nature, that's also creative and truly enjoyable coming through around this time. Or maybe the need to spontaneously take a class or go on a retreat or something like that. Finally, the eclipse at the end of the month on the 25th into the 26th with Jupiter in the 5th house just announces more of that same theme of newness around 5th house things that we started off talking about. Okay, so the next transit that comes in is going to be the emphasis on Sagittarius, Pisces, and Gemini. Oops. I don't know why I just clicked hours instead of days. All right, let's get back to Virgo. Okay, here we go. So the axis that's getting highlighted through the full moon this month is really busy all month long. On the 7th, you've got the sun in your 4th house squaring Neptune in your 7th. On the 8th or 9th, you've got Mercury moving into your 4th house, and then by the 20th, squaring Neptune in the 7th. And then on the 11th, you're going to have a full moon in Gemini in your 10th in Mercury's sign. So it's creating a T-square between your 4th, 10th, and 7th houses. Now, there is a kind of philosophical or spiritual revolution taking place in your life. It's mental or intellectual. You're looking at sort of philosophical or intellectual transition that may be happening in your life in general, but also potentially related to the workplace, 10th house, home and family, 4th house, and then 7th house, the house of spouse, marriage, and so forth. One of the things that could easily come up right now is that you're wondering if you need to shift or change your beliefs for someone else in your family or someone that you love, or if someone else is feeling the pressure to do that for you. You could also just be noticing that there is some kind of spiritual or religious or even academic transition that's happening. Someone in your family is going back to school. You know, someone in your family just decided to join a church. Just watch as the tension comes up, though, around what do I believe? What do I think? And what are the beliefs and practices of other people? How much should I compromise? How much should they compromise? And you're going to be looking at this in terms of how to manage your relationships. And also the other thing is like, just frankly, that you may feel like with the full moon in Gemini in your 10th house and its ruler Mercury in the opposite sign in the 4th, in a more conflicted relationship, you might be sitting there going like, okay, I feel and think very differently than I act or behave out in the world. Or you might, on the other hand, you might be thinking, I'm not sure what I believe or think any longer, and I'm feeling less and less sure of how to be in my life because I'm having something of a revolution of paradigm or thought structure somehow. This is probably being fueled by questions about how you want to access love with other people, or how you want to connect with other people. That's the Neptune square in the 7th house. Also questions about whether or not you allow people to influence you or not, or whether you allow them in or not, and what the healthy boundary should be. So I think this has a lot to do with feeling of needing to be supported at a very basic level, and questions about how to protect that sense of home security and foundation that we need in the 4th house, while also letting other people into our lives and make an impression on us, even if their ideas or values are different from our own. So, that's the tension as I'm seeing it. Now, last transit for the month takes place right around the 20th. We're going to see Venus breaking into the sign 6th house, busting out of the Saturn-Pluto dynamic, breaking into the 6th house in Aquarius, where it will immediately square Uranus in the 9th house. This is interesting because the 6th house is often a place of conflict. You've got Venus, goddess of harmony, moving into a house of conflict and immediately squaring Uranus in the 9th house, which is the house of the higher mind and beliefs. Something of an intellectual and relational revolution is happening in your life this month. That I feel certain of, but it's going to require some work on your part and the ability to be daring and to kind of come out and just express who you are. So good luck with that, because I think you'll be very happy if you take that risk, even if it involves a little bit of fear or even a little bit of healthy tension with others or within yourself. So that's what I've got for the earth signs this month. I hope that this was interesting for all of you. Thanks for listening. Next time I see you, it will be the first month of a new year. So have a very happy holiday season. We'll see you again in 2020. Take care.